Hi everyone, and welcome to Modernize Your Moneymaker. My name is Tim Twig, and I'm a staff software engineer at Modern, where I work on OpenRewrite and the Modern CLI. Now, as you can see from my GitHub profile, there's two things I really like. One is growing a beard while hiking, as you can see in the top left corner, and the other thing is contributing to open source software. Now, the past couple of years, those contributions have been on the theme of using OpenRewrite to automate code changes on open source software. But even before I joined Modern, I've been modernizing applications for years and years in a previous job as a consultant. We'll be looking at modernizing a successful older application. Some of you might call that a legacy application or a dirty monolith, but whatever it does, it helps the business make money, and who doesn't like that? But first up, why would you even consider modernizing it? It works, maybe it is then best not to touch it. But you're going to likely have to touch it anyway because of vulnerabilities. These can be quite disruptive, as we've seen with Log4j, Log4Shell, and Spring4Shell. And trust me when I say that you don't want to be reading the Spring Boot migration guides at 2 AM in the morning to fix a critical vulnerability. Don't ask me how I knew. You can also get double-digit performance improvements just by upgrading the JVM, which is the simplest thing you can do. And by automating away bugs, you can focus on the work that really matters. And if you're looking to hire, it's maybe best not to ask people to write Java 8 still. So finally, and there's automation here to help, because this would be a pretty boring presentation otherwise. So let's have a look at that automation. If you don't know OpenRewrite, you're in for a treat, because OpenRewrite is a framework for making safe code modifications. It is open source and free to use, and there's some 1,300 automation recipes that you can run to, for instance, upgrade libraries and frameworks, adopt new language features, resolve technical depths, and fixing vulnerabilities. With Modern, we've built a web interface and a CLI to run these recipes at scale across multiple projects. And we've recently been featured in the ThoughtWorks Tech Radar, such that more people are now flocking to the project. This presentation will be mostly a demo. I take you through some of the subjects seen here. I'll be using the Modern CLI, which is a quick and convenient way to run these recipes. But you can also use the open source Maven and Gradle plugins. You just have to be a bit more patient. So with that, we're going to switch to my IDE and do the awkward bit of swapping screens. I'm using Linux, so if it doesn't work, blame that. And I try again and show you like more pixels. Keep changes, yeah, decent. So then what I've done is I've written a small application. Is the font big enough for everyone? Yeah, I see some nodding. Then I'm going to switch to a preview. And I'm not actually going to take you through this application ahead of time. We're just going to try to modernize it and see what pops up. So as I said, to run these automations, I use the Modern CLI. And the very short instructions to install it is just go to Modern and download it. You might need to log in with GitHub, but that's about it. Then what you can do is you can download all our 1,300 recipes with this one command, which I'm not going to do on conference Wi-Fi. And then next up is you can build a lossless semantic tree model, where we take your code, build up a model that we can modify, and then let you run recipes against that for a considerable speed up. If you use the open source plugins, that model is built up every time, and thrown away at the end. So CLI has that benefit, the open source plugins do not. So what we're going to do here is, it's an older application. Probably we want to build some confidence in the changes that we make. And by doing, we're going to do that by modernizing the tests first. As always, green is good, red is bad. You know exactly when you're done when you're making these code changes. And so the first one I'm going to run is just a recipe to introduce assert J. And if I click correctly, you can see that it actually starts to run. I have two options. I'm going to go for the first one. And then soon enough, you'll see a progress bar and some results coming in, and then we can take you through those changes. Just a second more. So what it actually has done is it has created a patch file, and that patch file we can explore, but it's maybe easier to see if I actually apply the patch file, which I've just done now. And then we can do the regular comparison in IntelliJ of what we had before and what we have now. We've seen that we've modified one file, and this file used to use Hamcrest. Now, if you've used Hamcrest in the past, it used to be a common choice, but it's not been released since 2019. And as much as we all would want to go back to 2019, which was a simpler time, in software development, you should likely want to use something newer. So you can see here that we pretty much replaced the parentheses and kept the API mostly the same. But underwater, all of this is type safe. So if you want to migrate away from that, you can do so with just running this one automation. And then what we can do is we can save our work by doing a commit. But in this case, I want to do some more changes with patch files, so I'm just going to reset the changes. Because next up, we probably want to do a migration from an older version of JUnit to the most recent version. And for that, we have a different recipe that you can run just with the mod run recipe, JUnit 5 best practices. What this does is it finds any instances where you're still using a JUnit 3 API or a JUnit 4 API and brings that up to JUnit 5. Now, if you're still seeing things in your code that reference to JUnit 3, that's been outdated since 2006, yet you still see it all the time. And with this tooling, you can actually do something about it. So again, we're going to apply these changes, and we're going to look through what we actually made. So in this case, we saw that we had that JUnit 3 test. We replaced the extents, which was a common way to do that. Back then, you didn't have to use annotations. You just had the test prefix, and that was enough. But for newer versions, you now have to add that annotation, and you can drop that test prefix. If you see test as a prefix in your test today, that is a pattern that is 15 years old. You shouldn't be using that anymore, and you can just get rid of it this quickly. Now, they don't run because IntelliJ is easily confused, but it does actually work. So next up, I'm going to show you an example for JUnit 4, which is a bit more involved, because there's probably some things that you know you have to do. So if you were asserting a certain exception is thrown, then you now have to call a method. If you wanted to assert that a timeout was thrown, you need a new annotation, and all of that is handled for you. We're also swapping arguments, as you can see here, where you now have a message that needs to be the second argument rather than the first. And if you had any rules set up, then we have converted all of that for you. I'd say pretty decent attempt at migrating away from this. We also update your dependencies for you, removing the JUnit 4 version. And again, you can choose to make a commit out of this. But I'm gonna, again, reset this because I want to show you some more work still. Reset. So we have these recipes for, as you see, Hamcrest, but we also have them for any kind of mocking frameworks that you've been using over the years. And it's just a really convenient way to start making code changes. But you might want to also do some upgrades of your Java version. As I told you that you might have some older patterns that you want to replace, and you want to run maybe on Java 21. So I'm running this one right now. And again, we're going to look at what changes pop up. And I'll also want to apply those changes again. So need to wait a couple seconds more. Yep. And again, we can explore our changes. So what I've done here is you can, for instance, see here that we were using some string concatenations, but we don't have to do that anymore. We're now using Java 21, and we actually introduce a text block because we thought that makes sense. We've also introduced the instance of for your pattern matching, and it's just something that you don't have to Boy Scout your way through over the next coming years. Just run it once and you'll be done. We have another change in a different file over here, where you can see that we're moving away from Lombok because you're using a newer version. And if you didn't know yet, in Java 21 you have the new sequence collections API, where you can get the first or the last item of your list just by calling get first or get last. You've probably written this a couple thousand times over your career. And after 25 years, we finally have new methods for this. And you can read an article to find that you could do this. You can also run the automation. We have customers discovering language features just by running these automations. And so then we're going to, again, reset this. And I'm going to take you through a Spring Boot 3 migration. Because as you know, you have to go to Java 17, and then for Spring Boot, you probably have some more changes to do still. So we're going to let this run briefly, and then we're going to apply it before I jump back to my slides, because I don't have a lot of time. 15 minutes is pretty quick. So I'm hoping that I can show you this one, because there's a lot of old patterns in old applications where you're maybe using an auto-wired annotation on a constructor, which is no longer necessary. You may be passing arguments to an annotation, which is no longer necessary. Or you're using old versions of properties that they had, because they keep renaming those. And if you look very briefly, you can see that we've replaced all of that in your application, where you now replace the request mapping annotation with just get mapping, remove the second argument, remove the parameters, and all of this done for you. We will figure out where you are, and we will apply all those changes. So coming back to the README, we have some more. We can also fix some remove guava for you. We have a lot of code quality issues that we can apply. And this one in particular resolves some 60 different common static analysis issues, which you might know from a tool like Sonar. And if you run this once, you just get a whole new top 10 of issues in your technical dev. And the fun thing here is you can run it not just on one folder, but run it across across one project, but run it across different projects. So if I have all the Apache projects on my machine, and with this one command, I can just start patching all of those issues across all of those repositories. Which is, I think, pretty neat. It will make it such that you can actually get away from all of these issues. So stepping back to my slides, join this please. Yep. Apply. And I have to find it over there. So, and my cursor is gone. Yep. So if you if you run all these recipes once, you probably get rid of them. But as you work, or your colleagues work, or Copilot introduces old patterns, you probably want to get rid of those as they come in. And for that, you can integrate this into your CI. So anytime a new issue pops up, it should be a warning, and you want to get rid of that quite quickly. Now, I've shown you both the Modern CLI and the OpenRewrite recipes, but there's some differences. So OpenRewrite runs very well on a single project on your own machine with no connection whatsoever to Modern, whereas the CLI uses Modern to speed things up considerably and allow you to run across multiple projects. If you want to know more, here's 2 links that you can actually go to and find all of this information. And I'm also giving a workshop together with a colleague later this afternoon, where you can run all of this on your own project if you want. That's at 2:40 in the workshop room. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for your attention. Cheers.